In 1986, 29-year-old Russell Keith Dardeen and his wife Ruby Elaine Dardeen moved to Ina, Illinois with their 2-year-old son Peter. Both of them preferred to go by their middle names Keith and Elaine. Ina is a small town located in the southernmost part of Jefferson County in Illinois. And when I say this town is small, I'm not kidding. In the 1980 census, Ina had a population of 460. In the 1990 census, they had a population of 489. They had a store, a gas station, a firehouse, a bank, a post office, and that was about it. Even today, it's considered more of a village than a town. The family bought a beige and white mobile home and rented land for it just beside Route 37. The Illinois Central Railroad tracks were on the other side of the highway. Elaine was also pregnant with a second child, a daughter, that they were going to name Casey. Keith worked as a treatment plant operator, while Elaine worked at an office supply store. The family were very active at their Baptist church, and they played in the musical ensemble. A large amount of money that the couple made actually went towards Peter's college fund, despite him only being 2 at the time. Keith would even buy Kroger soda cans and resell them for 50 cents each. Overall, they were a well-liked family that were active in the community. Everything seemed to be going well for the young couple and their growing family. Unfortunately, there'd been a rise in murders and rapes in the Jefferson County area, which had 38,577 residents at the time. Over the past 2 years, there'd been 15 murders, including the rape and murder of a 10-year-old girl, which happened nearby in May of 1987. Ina itself also had quite a brutal history. There was a famous case in 1924 where 2 people were murdered by their spouses through arsenic poisoning. There was another famous case in 1985 where a man murdered his entire family while under the influence of LSD. The recent rise in crime caused a lot of concern for Keith, especially with another kid on the way. He didn't feel comfortable with his family living and growing up in an area that was becoming very violent. At one point, Keith actually told his mother that they were going to move back to Mount Carmel, Illinois, where Keith was originally from. But he never gave a specific reason why. He also said it didn't matter whether he'd find a job there or not, and that he was going to move back either way. Now, Keith's mother thought this was a little strange, considering the family were very focused on saving money, and the move would most likely be a costly one. Keith and Elaine went to great lengths to protect their family. They always made sure to lock their doors at night. They didn't like answering the door, and they barely let anyone in the house, especially people they didn't know. They even refused to let a woman who came to their door come in to use a phone. Keith particularly was very cautious. While Keith's concerns and safety measures were obviously justified, it brings up the question of whether something might have happened, or if something was going on to make Keith so paranoid. On November the 18th, 1987, Keith failed to show up for work. Now, this was out of character for him and worried his boss. His boss tried calling the house and there was no answer. He then called Keith's parents, who also hadn't heard from the family. With both Keith's boss and parents very concerned, they decided to call the police and arranged to meet them at the mobile home. They knocked on the door and there was no answer. A police officer then looked through a window and saw people laying on the bed under blankets. Even after knocking, the people weren't moving. The police officers then found the door was unlocked. They turned the knob and discovered the horrific scene inside. Under the blankets were the dead bodies of Elaine, Peter and a small infant. Both Elaine and Peter had been bound and gagged with duct tape, and it's believed that Elaine was bound to a chair at some point. Both of them were beaten severely with a baseball bat, and they both had fractured skulls. During the attack, Elaine went into spontaneous labour. She was well into her 3rd trimester at the time. The exact reason is unknown, but it was most likely from being beaten so severely, the shock of seeing her son being beaten, or it just happened naturally. It's also unknown whether Elaine had been alive during the delivery. After Elaine had delivered her baby girl, the killer then beat the infant with a baseball bat. He then placed them all in the bed to make it look like they were sleeping, and all 3 of the victims died of blunt force trauma. The police were obviously shocked, and many of the officers on the scene were left traumatised from what they saw. There'd been no forced entry into the home. This ruled out the possibility of it being a robbery, as there were valuables in the house that would have been taken. Additionally, Elaine wasn't raped, which left even more questions as to what the motive was. The killer had tried to clean up the blood, but it seemed like they gave up, suggesting that they knew they had time, meaning they weren't even worried about someone walking in on them. Another very strange detail is the open door. The family were very adamant on not letting anyone into their house, and often didn't even answer the door. It seemed that whoever killed them had been let inside, so it was possibly someone the family knew. But Keith was nowhere to be found. Also, the family's car, a 1981 red Plymouth, was gone. The first thought that the police had was that Keith had murdered his family and ran. A call was sent out to be on the lookout for the vehicle, and roadblocks were stationed around town. Officers were sent to Mount Carmel to talk to Keith's family. Keith's sister remembered being told, "Your brother has done this, where is he?" It seemed obvious that Keith was the one that killed them, especially with all of the family killings in the area over the last few years. The next day, the car was found parked outside of a bank in Benton, Illinois, about 11 miles away from Ina. There was blood all over the inside of the car, but there was still no sign of Keith. The same day, a group of hunters were passing through a wheat field about 1 mile away from the Dardeen home. They discovered a body that was in an absolutely awful condition. Sadly, the body was Keith's. He had 3 bullet wounds in the front of his skull, in the right side of his face, and through his left cheek. The killer had also cut off his genitals. There was also a local rumour that after the killer cut off Keith's genitals, he then put the severed penis into Keith's mouth. Whether this rumour is true or not, we'll never know. However, Keith died in a horrible way. One thing for sure is, this attack was personal. To kill the Dardeen family in such a violent and horrendous way just shows that the killer had some sort of grudge against them. It's also not far off to assume that this killer was experienced. Perhaps they'd killed before. Now, after their number 1 suspect was found murdered, presumably by the same person that killed the rest of the family, the police were desperate to find out who did it. After the autopsies of the victims, the police couldn't conclude who was killed first, but it was determined that they were all killed within an hour of each other. One thing they knew though was that with all of the blood inside the family car, Keith was either killed or mutilated inside that vehicle. The news of the murders spread like a wildfire throughout Ina. Gun and security system sales spiked, and people that once left their doors unlocked now double-checked to make sure they were locked. While the rest of the town was in a state of panic, investigators struggled to find a valid motive for the massacre. There was no forced entry. All the doors were unlocked, which ruled out a robbery. While Keith was sexually mutilated, it was ruled that there was no sexual motive since Elaine wasn't raped. No evidence was found of extramarital affairs, debt, or apparent grudges against them. There was a trace of marijuana found in the house, but they had no evidence they were drug dealers or that they even did drugs, so they assumed it belonged to the killer. Joanne Dardeen, Keith's mother, suggested that maybe someone tried to get Keith to sell drugs, or that Elaine turned down someone's advances, and they retaliated and lashed out. Investigators even went as far to say that the murders could be the work of a satanic cult, and that the killer was trying to appease the devil. This was quickly shut down after experts on cults and ritual killings said the murders had no signs of cult activity. The police mainly theorised that after the killer had somehow gained entry into the house, they then left with Keith and killed him. Then the killer returned to the house, where they assumed he left Peter and Elaine tied up and killed both of them alongside Elaine's newborn baby girl. The investigation was at a standstill with no leads and no ideas on who could have killed this poor family. We have the pieces of the puzzle, we just have to put them in the right order, said Detective Mike Anthis. For a while, it seemed like everyone gave up on solving the gruesome crime. However, Keith's mother made sure the police didn't forget. She gathered more than 3,000 signatures to try getting the Oprah Winfrey Show to do a segment on the murders. She was denied when the producers said the crime was too brutal for daytime television. Another attempt for a segment was directed at America's Most Wanted, and at first they had the same reaction as the Oprah Winfrey Show, but they changed their mind and did a segment on the murders in 1998. The show didn't generate any new leads though. They weren't any closer to solving the murders than they were in 1987. After 12 years of nothing, the police finally had a viable suspect, a serial killer named Tommy Lynn Sells. Sells was a serial killer that was linked to over 22 murders in America, but claimed to have murdered over 70. He had a childhood filled with trauma. Both him and his twin sister contracted spinal meningitis at 18 months old. While he survived, his sister died. Throughout his early years, he didn't have much guidance, and he really didn't have anyone to turn to. He rarely went to school and began abusing substances at the young age of 7. Around this time, a man from a nearby town befriended Sells. On the outside, he seemed like a man interested in helping a young boy with no one in his corner. He would give Sells gifts, take him out places, and Sells would occasionally sleep at the man's home. Later, it was discovered what was going on behind closed doors. The man was found guilty of child molestation, and Sells had been one of his victims since he was 8. By age 10, Sells had stopped going to school completely. He smoked pot and drank alcohol almost on a daily basis. When he was 13, he climbed into his grandmother's bed while naked. Now Sells' mother was furious and used this as a reason to leave. She took his other siblings and left Sells completely alone. At that point, Sells had no one and nowhere to go. He drifted from town to town, stealing what he needed to survive and doing odd jobs. He attacked his first female victim by pistol whipping her while she was unconscious. Later, Sells claimed he committed his first murder at the age of 16, saying he broke into a house and killed a man performing oral sex on a young boy. There was no proof to back up his story. He also claimed to have killed a man named John Cade Sr. in July of 1979 after Cade caught Sells breaking into his home. Sells then spent most of his days robbing houses, hopping trains from town to town and killing and raping people. In 2000, Sells was arrested for slitting the throats of Kayleen Harris, 13, and Crystal Searles, 10, in Del Rio, Texas. Now, while Harris died from the attack, Searles survived and was able to provide a composite sketch for police, and Sells was arrested. After his arrest, Sells claimed responsibility for 70 unsolved murders, including the Dardine family. While he seemed like a very likely suspect, he was constantly changing his story when talking to the police. In 2010, he claimed he met Keith at a truck stop. When telling the story again, he claimed he met Keith at a pool hall. In both versions, he claimed Keith invited him over for dinner and to have a threesome with him and Elaine. Keith's mother, who was still very involved in the case, denied his claims, saying Keith would never put his family in that kind of danger. When asked how Elaine's body was positioned, he answered incorrectly. When he finally answered correctly, he provided details, but those details could easily have been found in the media. Many of his other statements didn't match the official reports. There was also no physical evidence linking him to the crime. I know people got their doubts. They say there's no physical evidence tying me to the Dardines, but there wasn't for any of them, because they wasn't looking for me. I moved. I was always a transient, said Sells in a 2010 interview. In the end, the police couldn't find proof of Sells' involvement in the Dardeen murders. Now, while he was linked to over 22 murders and confessed to over 70, Sells was only ever convicted of one murder, the murder of Kayleen Harris. On April the 4th, 2014, Sells was executed for murder by lethal injection. He was never convicted for any other murders, including the Dardeen family. To this day, the murders of Keith, Elaine, Peter and their newborn girl haven't been solved. Now, could Tommy Lynn Sells have been their killer? Could it have been the work of another serial killer? Or could it have been the work of a satanic cult? Was something else going on entirely that no one knew about? There's so many questions that need answering. Share your thoughts in the comments section. If you find this video interesting, then hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos. Thank you for watching.